Hello and welcome to the shop. Today I've got a project to show you. It is very simple. It's a lot of fun to turn, and I'm hoping it's going to be really popular with everyone out there who crochets. I've been asked from time to time by crocheters if I could make a handle for the back of the crochet hook, because they say after you crochet for a long period of time, your hand, it's tough on your hand, and sometimes if you have arthritis, it's even tougher to hold those tiny needles. So let me show you what my idea is and what I came up with to help the crocheters. I hope you enjoy. I'm going to start out with a standard crochet hook that I picked up at a local hobby store. While I was there, I ran into a lady who crochets and asked her what the most common hook sizes were, because when I looked at the rack, there are a bunch of different sizes, and she told me that G and H are probably the two most common sizes that they use. So I picked up a couple of G's and a couple of H's, and we're going to start with that. I need to know what the diameter of the back half of my crochet hook is so that I can drill the proper size hole in my blank. I grabbed my drill bit gauge and found that 11/64 is the size of the hole for the G hook. I've chucked up a piece of Paduke in my Nova Chuck, and I centered it as best as I could using a 60-degree cone center. That cone center has left a divot in the bottom of the Paduke blank, which will allow me to fine center with my drill bit. I've placed a 11/64 inch bit in my Jacob's chuck. Unfortunately, my chuck is a number 1 Morse taper, so it will not fit my current lathe, but I think I can drive this in by hand. I've positioned the bit in my Jacob's chuck so that the length of the bit is equivalent to the length of the back half of the crochet hook. You'll notice the tip of the bit is just past where the hook starts to flatten out. From what I understand, this part is where the person's thumb goes as they're crocheting. I'm going to start by removing my tailstock and getting it out of the way, and then I'll go ahead and drill my hole right up the center of my blank. I'll bring the tailstock back up at that point to steady the blank, and then we'll begin turning. I've slowed my lathe down to the lowest possible speed which it will run, and because I had my tailstock brought up with that 60-degree center, I have a nice little divot in the end of my blank to help me get started. All I want to do is drive this straight in, and I'll pull it out periodically to remove any chips, and we'll just make a nice hole right up the center of this blank. I'd prefer to be doing this with the tailstock, and hopefully soon I'll get an adapter for this Jacob's chuck so that it will work in my drill press, but for the time being we just have to make do with what we've got. Let's test fit our crochet needle, and that's really nice. There's a tiny bit of play in there, probably because it was sloppy since I did it by hand. I'm not overly concerned about that because the hole will be filled with epoxy, and then when I slide this in, it'll solidify it and this thing will not move. I'm going to start by just truing this up. I'm using a chuck because I have one, and I think it'll give me a nice hold on the blank, but I do believe that this same process could easily be done between centers. So don't let it scare you away if you don't have a chuck. Still go ahead and give this a try. Now that I've got my blank trued up, I needed to make a couple of measurements. The first measurement I needed was the overall length that I want my handle to be. And the way I found that is I brought my crochet hook back over to the lathe. Here's the flat part. So we know we drilled about this far back into the blank. That's what this little hash mark is. That's the depth of the hole that I made in my blank. I randomly added a little bit of distance to the blank so that I could turn a nice back to the blank, or nice end to the handle, and not have to worry about seeing the hole that I drilled in the blank. Once I determined where the back of my blank would be, I measured the entire length of the blank, which was right at 8 centimeters. There's no real reason it's 8 centimeters. I got lucky. It could have been 8.5. It could have been 8.25 centimeters. It just happened to be 8. So I know that the center is 4. My plan is to taper from the center of the blank down to the back and the front of the handle. When I insert the crochet hook, you'll be able to hold the handle comfortably, put your thumb on this flat spot, which is what I understand you do when you crochet, and hopefully you'll have a nice handle to work the yarn with. I'm just working the shape and trying to, maintain my center and then my end points. That's a little fat, but that's not a problem. Once I get this to where I'm happy with the front and the back of the handle, then I can just come through and just really smooth over the center. But that gives me a good demarcation line to know where the center of my blank is. Let's pull the tailstock away real quick, and let's insert our crochet hook into the handle. Now what you see is I still have quite a bit of meat here where the handle meets the hook. We need to take this down a little farther, and we'll do a similar thing on the back of the handle. Now I don't look for the back of the handle to be as narrow as the front. This needs to have a smooth transition from hand to hook. But the back, I don't want there to be a point there. I want that to be rounded over so it's a nice comfortable feel in the back of the palm of your hand. So we need to do a little more work on bringing this down. I like how this is turning out. I got the front of the handle down to where I thought it felt comfortable. When I insert the crochet hook, my flat spot's there. My thumb has a real nice transition between the hook and the handle. Feels really comfortable in my hand. The handle is kind of nice the way it's curved, so I'm not going to take any meat out of here. I'm just going to kind of smooth this over. We'll get this sanded up, finished, and then we'll round over the back and get it parted off. I've sanded my handle down to 600 grit, and I've wiped it down with a little denatured alcohol, and I think it looks beautiful. I don't see any scratches in it. I sand it with the grain in between grits. I've decided to use friction polish on this, and I'm going to go ahead and get the handle polished up now before I reduce the size of the wood that's holding it still on, within the chuck. I'll need this meat to be able to put the pressure on here to get that polish to do its job. Once the handle's polished, I'll start turning the back half of the handle. I'll turn it down as far as I think I can. Then I'll sand and polish with the friction polish the back end of the handle. Then we'll part it off and we'll take care of the little nub when this is off the lathe. I'll be using Hut Crystal Coat. This just happens to be what I have available right now. There are many, many really good friction polishes, and you'll ask 5 turners and you'll get 5 answers as to what the best one is. So pick a polish that that you like the results it gives you, and go with that. I'm just going to wipe the polish on. Get a nice coat on there. I'm going to put a little more because this Padauk really seems to be soaking it in. Okay, now let's fire it up. And I just put a little pressure on the handle. I don't want to put too much because I don't want to knock it loose from the chuck, but I want to put, you can actually squeeze it and get good pressure on it. I want to put plenty of pressure on there. The heat that you build up, it'll start, you'll feel it in your fingers, but the heat that you build up is what makes this polish do exactly what it's supposed to do. I've got a clean paper towel, and I'm going to go ahead and start buffing this blank off. Once again, I'm just applying friction. You can hear it sing. It looks really nice. I'm going to go ahead and put a second coat. I always like to put 2 coats of friction polish. I don't think that it's necessary in all cases, but this Padauk is really dry and it just hasn't started to shine yet. So I think a second coat will really bring out the color in the Padauk. That's about all the farther I dare to go because I'm getting pretty shallow down there on my connection to the original blank. I'm going to leave the tailstock up, and I'm going to go ahead and slow the lathe down, and we're going to sand this and get this part finished, and then I'll come back and part it off and we'll finish the nib. Just trying to blend it back across the blank, make sure I have a nice even coat. One thing that I forgot to do after I put the friction polish on the first time, or the front half of the blank, I forgot to wax it. It's been a while since I've used friction polish, and just neglected to do that step. So you can't tell anywhere where I had sanded back. It looks really nice. It blended nicely. I'm going to go ahead right now and put a little wax on there and buff it. That'll help bring the shine out, and then we'll get her parted off. I'm just going to use a little Hut brown wax. I also have the white, which is generally the final wax that you put on, but I know from experience that Padauk has a lot of voids because of the grain, and that white will get down in there, and it doesn't look really attractive. So we're just going to put the brown wax on and buff it off. Put it on just like a crayon. Just start at one end and just color right to the other. I'm going to put a little support behind this. Get a good coat of wax on there. All right, we'll buff it off. This would have been a little easier while it was still had a little more meat down at the back end, but I think it'll be all right. Having the tailstock up really helps. You want to rotate the paper quite a bit when you're taking the wax off. Otherwise, it just builds up and doesn't really remove it. Now I'm going to flip it over to a clean side, and we're going to come down through there. Now that we got the majority off, we'll come back over it, and this will really help this friction polish have a beautiful appearance. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Padauk is such a gorgeous wood. I just love the oranges and the reds, nice browns. I'm going to go ahead now, part this off, and we'll clean up the back end. overall it looks really nice. There's a tiny bit of cleanup on the back end. What I'll do is I'll take my sandpaper grits and I'll go over to my table saw, which has a cast iron top. It's a nice, smooth, level surface, and I'll just basically take this and swirl it on the sandpaper and clean that little nub off there, and then I'll get some friction polish and a little bit of wax on there, and we'll be ready to glue this up. To glue my crochet hook inside of my handle, I'm going to use a little bit of Gorilla Glue epoxy. So we're going to mix that up real quick, and just want to get a little bit of each. There we go. That's way more than I need, but okay, we're going to mix it up real good. I've selected a dowel rod that's a little bit smaller than the size of my crochet hook, and my hope is that I'll be able to get some of this epoxy down inside of this blank without getting it all over the blank. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a little bit of blue painter's tape and I'm going to put it around the outside of my blank. And the idea is I'm just trying to keep as much epoxy off of the blank as possible. So hopefully that'll help a little bit. Okay. Slide the hook down in. Take our tape off. Clean up the end a little bit. And now I'm going to just set this aside to dry. Here's my finished crochet hook handle. There's your needle there. Extends right out of the end of the handle. I finished the back end up real nicely. It fits comfortably in my hand. My thumb fits nice on the flat spot. There's a spot for my finger right on the back half. I really like it. I need to find someone who crochets and have them test it out and see what they think, but I'm happy with it. Thank you so much for joining me in the shop today. I hope you found this a fun and interesting project, and I hope that a lot of you are going to attempt this project to help out the crocheters in your life. If you liked this video, please give me a thumbs up. If you really liked it, then do me the honor of sharing the video. If you're not a subscriber to my channel, I invite you to click the subscribe button. All of my future videos will be delivered directly to your YouTube feed. Have a great evening, and remember, you are always welcome in my shop. Take care, guys. See you soon.